Hi, everybody. Here I have Dr. Khanna. She's the winner of our 2021 Locum Heroes campaign. In this call, we're going to be talking about her volunteer work overseas. We'll be talking about the charities that she's chosen to donate her $2,500 to, and we're going to get to know her a little bit more.
First of all, I just want to thank you, Chris. You've been terrific. It's been great to get to know a little bit more about Barton Associates, and thank you so much for this incredibly high honor. Was nominated by my longtime friend, actually my senior resident in internal medicine residency, Dr. Gordon Applebaum, who also is, in my eyes, a locum tenens hero as well.
To start, I wanted to ask you, you've been nominated for Locum Heroes based on your humanitarian work overseas. It's been so great hearing about it during your nomination and one of our phone calls before. One instance that particularly stood out to us was when you were telling me about your work overseas in India. And I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I have volunteered in more than 16 countries. I primarily volunteer after disaster response, but I've also done some humanitarian work in many countries, including India. So for India, I actually approached it several ways. One of the things that I did is I lived in the slums. Some of you have probably seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, which was about the Dharavi slums. I worked with a different foundation called Janvi Foundation, and I take care of little kids who really, there's really a dearth of primary care there. There's almost no such thing as preventive medicine or preventive care or well child checks like we have here in the United States. So it's nice when you can go out there and you can get together with the kids who are just so eager and interested in talking to people from different countries, and you can also take care of them, and you can catch things that may turn out to be a problem for them or shorten their life expectancy in the long run. So I did mostly kind of well child checks, primary care. There were a few injuries that happened when I was with them, and I took care of those, luckily superficial injuries. There were children that I thought needed to be referred for imaging studies or possible surgical interventions. So I asked that they be referred through the kind of NGO, non-governmental organization pipeline of foundations to get the care that they possibly needed. And we did something fun too. I held a toothbrush clinic. I had taken toothbrushes with me from the United States and just purchased kind of, bulk discount volume toothbrushes, because these are the little things that we don't think about in the United States because they're just, so common for us. But children in other countries are brushing their teeth with twigs. And not only does that damage the enamel, particularly when the adult, permanent teeth start coming in, but it doesn't really clean as well. So I took toothbrushes, I took toothpaste, and we had a toothbrush clinic where I basically demonstrated how you need to brush your teeth. And just as in the United States, where mouth hygiene isn't the greatest in people of lower socioeconomic classes, we have that same problem in developing countries where, mouth hygiene and attention to teeth just isn't really given. So that was terrific to be able to do something that the kids thought was fun, but really the end result was to improve their dental care.
Now, what specifically called you to that area of need? Was it through agency, or did you just decide, I'm going to do this?
Actually, I met somebody through kind of basic networking who was the executive director of the John V. Foundation, and he invited me to come out. I had met him through a previous humanitarian trip to India where I worked with the Rotary Foundation, where we administered oral polio drops to children. And I met Ashley through that effort, and he invited me to return, but this time specifically to work with the kids in the slums that the foundation was taking care of.
Now, what made you decide this is what I want to do? Because obviously, we're just talking about India, and we'll get into your other experiences volunteering. But what happened one day when you were just like, I want to do this? Was there something that made you think about it, or someone recommended it, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Like so many things, sometimes you just fall into to things that happen, and then you realize that perhaps it is really a calling. But the way that all of my disaster and humanitarian work started was in 1999. I'm a little bit of a news junkie, so I'm always watching the news. And I was watching the news and I was seeing all of the devastating a video of the ethnic cleansing that was going on in Eastern Europe with the whole the Serbians and the Yugoslavia and all of the countries that were kind of being consolidated. There was ethnic cleansing. There was a lot of civil unrest. And some of those people were being brought to the United States. They were being taken to many countries, but some of them were coming into the United States as refugees. And there was something on one of the news programs that said, we really need doctors to help with all the refugees that are coming in because we need to do public health screenings on them, which is something that maybe a lot of people don't know, that when we have people coming to the United States from different countries, we screen. We screen for contagious diseases. We screen for basic health checks. And so they needed doctors to help with that. And the way that I could get to them was through a organization called the Disaster Medical Assistance Team, which is run out of the Department of Health and Human Services through the National Disaster Medical System when something happens and they have to send in first responders. So I had to sign up for that team in order to get to the end result to help these people, these refugees that were coming over. Well, then as a member of the team, then I started getting calls. Well, we've got this disaster and we need you for this, and we've got this drill, or we've got this training program, or we need to do warehouse inventory on our disaster medical supplies. And so I became part of the team that way. And then one thing led to another. In terms of the domestic disaster deployments, I would be deployed through this particular organization. But then in 2004, when the Indian Ocean tsunami happened, the organization that I was working for at that time sent me overseas to do some work, and that started my international humanitarianism, because what happened is after I came back from that initial trip, I went back 3 months later and spent a month there in Banda Aceh, Indonesia, treating survivors of the Indian Ocean tsunami. And that was my first international deployment, and I realized how rewarding it was to be able to take a skill set that is desperately needed, particularly in developing countries, even in times of non-disasters, because these developing countries function at basically chronic low-level disaster states all the time. So when something happens, whether it's a cyclone or a hurricane or an earthquake, it really throws the entire region into chaos. And the typical kind of healthcare, which is already lacking, becomes even so much more devastating.
Mm-hmm. Now, just to kind of transition a little bit, I know that, before you've been doing locum tenens assignments, and one of the big things that, we talk about when we try to sell locum tenens, we talk about the flexibility of it and how you can go off and go, volunteer overseas and stuff like that. I know that was a big thing for you, being able to just kind of be like, all right, I'm going to take a break from work and I'm going to go do this. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more about how locum tenens has given you the opportunities to be able to go help where help is needed.
Well, in my case, my passion is disaster response and humanitarianism, and locum tenens has afforded me the ability to be able to do that. But for somebody else whose passion is skiing, for someone else whose passion is mountain climbing, I mean, you're just not going to have the flexibility, I think, with a regular full-time job that you are with locum tenens opportunities. There's so many advantages to locum tenens. I mean, I have had experiences through locum tenens that I otherwise wouldn't have. I'm a triple residency trained and triple board certified physician. My specialties are internal medicine, public health, and occupational medicine. And locum tenens work has given me the opportunity to work in a college health clinic for a few months. It's given me the opportunity to work with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, for a few months. It's given me the opportunity to go overseas and work as a contractor with the World Health Organization, which is, the bastion of public health. It's the main organization in the world. And in addition to all those great experiences that I otherwise wouldn't have if I was working the same job over and over again, it's given me the opportunity to space them out. So what do I do in between those full-time jobs where I'm, my day job where I actually can earn the money? I do what I'd like to do, which is volunteering in disaster response, or going off to a different country and doing some humanitarian work. So my entire lifestyle, my entire being, the essence of my professional work and much of my personal lifestyle too, just would not have happened if it wasn't for the ability to work in locum tenens.
You've been doing locum tenens pretty much since you got out of residency, correct? I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit more to maybe somebody who's watching who, is about to get out of their residency and they're considering locum tenens.
Well, in addition to the incredible flexibility, which we've talked about, in addition to the vast array of experiences that somebody can have, which we've talked about, there are many other advantages to it. First of all, it gives you the opportunity to explore geography, right? How do you know that you want to make a 5-year commitment to Portland, Maine, unless you've lived there? So it'd be great to go and spend some time there, maybe 3 months in a locum tenens opportunity in the winter months, and see maybe is that for you. On the opposite extreme, if you wanted to work in someplace like Hawaii, which has a very temperate climate and it's highly desirable for most people, you might want to accept a locum tenens assignment there for a few months and see, you know, how is Christmas without snow, right? Is that something that you want to raise your kids experiencing, or do you want them to be in a place that has 4 seasons where you experience all of them? So it gives you the incredible opportunity to explore geography. Another thing that I've noticed with my cohorts, when many of them came out of medical school, they had hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, and they were knee deep in basically debt. And so what they had to do is accept opportunities that were high paying opportunities. But sometimes you sell your soul when you accept those opportunities, right? You have to sign egregious contracts, which have incredible do not compete clauses. And one of the ways that you're kind of sucked into that situation is heavy bonuses are offered. So you're going to sign a 5-year contract with a, say, $250,000 bonus, and you might think, great, I can pay off all of my student loans with one fell swoop. But if you do that, you're locked in. Well, wouldn't you rather have the opportunity of experiencing what is that office staff like to work with? What is that geography like to live in? Is my spouse going to be able to find a job in that market? Wouldn't you like to experience that first before you sign your life away? Because I've actually had friends who have done that and realized what a terrible mistake they've made. And because that bonus, that enticement comes with the obligation of staying for 5 years, since the opportunity didn't work out for them because they didn't try it out first, they left. And then they had to repay that bonus back. So they were actually in deeper than they otherwise would have been.
Mhm.
I just can't say enough about locum tenens opportunities.
Do you see other locum providers that are over there who are doing something similar to you?
All the time. I really do. And thanks for bringing that up, because that's another great benefit of doing locum tenens work is the people that you're exposed to, you otherwise probably wouldn't run into if you were just working in the same job and interacting with the same counterparts every day and referring to the same referral network, et cetera, et cetera. And that's great not only for your personal space and the wide, vast, different types of people you meet. It's also good for your professional development and your personal practice. When you meet with people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, from different training, from different education, from different locales, then you learn to practice in many different ways as well too. And you strengthen your own ability to practice medicine because you've been exposed to different types of best practices. So, one way of doing something because it was community standard in a place that you committed to may not be the best way. And it may not be something that will protect you from legal, malpractice down the line because you didn't realize that there was a better way to do something. So even from the stance of professional development, it's a win-win.
I want to transition back to your volunteer work a bit. I know you said we'd get back to it later, but I want to hear more. Obviously we were impressed with everything you did in India, but I know you've done way more than that. And I was wondering if maybe you could tell us. I know it's probably hard to pick, but what would you have to say is your favorite volunteer assignment you've ever done?
Wow. That's a tough one, because I'm the kind of person that finds value in kind of almost every experience that I go through, whether it's being exposed to a new tropical fruit in Indonesia, or whether it's being eating fish out of my hand that was just caught in the Amazon jungle in Brazil, because I was working with a group of physicians who were taking care of runners in a race there. I mean, there's just so many life experiences that I've had doing locum tenens and taking advantage of the flexibility that locum tenens gives me that I otherwise would not have been. But I have to say that in terms of the disaster deployments, they've been very impactful and very meaningful to me. When I'm often asked what is the most indelible disaster deployment that I've been on, it's a surprising answer for most people, and that is Hurricane Katrina. Because most people are expecting me to say that it was when I went to the Haiti earthquake, or when I went to the Bangkok floods, or when I went to the Philippines typhoon. But it's not. It was here in the United States. And I sometimes have difficulty expressing myself because even just remembering the circumstances of that kind of brings tears to my eyes. But I was one of the first 4 physicians at the New Orleans airport in August of 2005. And we were not prepared for the onslaught. We were not prepared for the lack of water. We were not prepared for the lack of food. The disaster teams didn't have anywhere to sleep, much less offer our patients the ability to have shelter and comfort. And I think what made it all so surprising was it was the United States of America. So I have to say Hurricane Katrina, of all of my part-time work, has really been the most indelible and devastating experience that I've had in disaster response.
Now, on top of that, what would you say is generally the most challenging thing about what you do?
So I'm going to answer that question by turning it around, because I do a lot of talks. I give a lot of presentations, particularly to younger physicians or physicians in training. And they ask what kind of advice I would have for them if they wanted to do disaster response or humanitarian work, and I always say the same thing, and that is maintain your physical fitness level and your mental well-being. And that's because you are going to be put in positions and see things that are really devastating to experience, and really which most people, much less physicians, will ever experience. You may be working with bodies, you may be working with body parts. When I was deployed to the Alaskan Airlines crash, just after the crash in the winter of 2000, which took place off the coast of Oxnard in California, I worked with the DMORT team, which stands for Disaster Mortuary Operations Rescue Team. And we were bringing body parts up from the water. So we were bringing, feet up and chests of people up and things like that. So you have to prepare yourself. You have to have, even more than resilience, there's another term I like better than resilience, and that's hardiness. And that means you have to have a certain hardiness to you where you are not going to collapse. We do have a mantra when it comes to disaster relief, and that is take care of yourselves and take care of the team. Otherwise, you won't be able to take care of others. And on the face value of it, it may seem like it's selfish, because you think, what do you mean? You're there to help others. But if we are not in our full form, whether it's mentally or physically, or our environmental conditions, or us having enough water and things to eat, we can't take care of others. And the worst part that can come out of that is that we become liabilities to our own team. And generally in these kind of deployments, somebody from your group or your team is assigned force protection every single day. So I remember one day I was force protection for our team, and one of our team members came to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, my legs have blown up. My sugar is wildly out of control." He had type 2 diabetes, and I have venous stasis changes. And I looked at his legs and I thought, oh my gosh, they're edematous, and you've got a lot of dependent edema in there, and we need to put you on the bus, and you've got to put your legs up, and we have to take you out of the line, and we have to take me out of the line now too, because I have to take care of you. Turns out that his blood sugars have always been wildly out of control. And he came on the deployment knowing that. And it was a real disappointment to hear that because of what I said earlier. He took himself out, he took me out. That meant that we could take care of the people that we were sent there to take care of in a less effective manner.
So obviously, as the winner of Locum Heroes, you're awarded $2,500 to yourself and $2,500 to the charity of your choice. I know that you've chosen to split up the donation to two different charities, and I was wondering if you could talk about each charity you chose and why.
Yes, of course. Um, I've been deeply disturbed over the past few years about the hatred and the divisiveness that's occurred in this country. I've never seen anything like it. And I don't see anything like it when I go to other countries. Everybody is just wholly accepted for who they are and what contributions, small or large, that they can make to themselves, their family, their community, and their country. And so, in particular, as of late, with the racism, with the attacks on Asian Americans, which really ramped up over the past year after the pandemic started, I thought that I would like to donate my money to combat those efforts and remind everybody that we really are all one. I don't like hearing when people say bad things about immigrants. I myself am an immigrant. I came to this country when I was barely a year old. And I think that immigrants have contributed great things to this country. I can speak for myself in terms of just my volunteering and my humanitarianism. I've donated tens of thousands of dollars of free medical care of my own time. I've taken equipment that I've purchased on by myself to other countries. I've sponsored people and hosted them to come to other countries to help the humanitarian efforts. And I don't think you can paint people with a broad brush and say you're bad because you're an immigrant. We're a country of immigrants. So what I decided to do was I decided to give the $2,500 to two organizations. And the first is the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Committee, also known as A3PCON. And this is a group that is formed specifically to combat discrimination and misconduct and intentional acts against Asian Americans. The second is my own sorority, my own social sorority. I was in Kappa Delta when I was at Northwestern University. And as much of a boon as it was then to have sisters around me that supported me, I mean, dozens of them, it turned out that as an alumni, I'm even more so. They supported me when I was getting my medical degree with a small stipend as a scholarship winner. And most recently, they showcased some of my humanitarian work in our magazine and online. And it was actually one of the top 10 magazines of all time of my sorority in terms of the interest in the articles and the feature story. So they have recently formed an organization, I should say recently, but it's about a year old now, called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of Kappa Delta. And it has the same goals as the other organization that I spoke about. And it is basically to bring us together on common ground. And the underlying thesis, I guess, is that, everybody is good, everybody is kind. We're all here to do the same type of good work. And we should be more inclusionary than exclusionary. So thank you so much to Barton for the $2,500. I've notified both of the organizations and they're thrilled. And they thank you too.